Hi, everyone. We are back for our final four and the kind of crowning of our winner here, but the final series in our analysis around what is the best ERP vendor for our small to medium business size community. So I'm Kyler Cheatham. I'm very honored to be your host today. I'm from The Confluential, and I am joined by my friend and colleague, Christy Barber, who is really our SMB specialist. She spent her career and looking at different technologies, how to integrate business strategies within them, specifically in not only SMB ERP, but also on the financial side. So she understands kind of what that total cost of ownership really looks like, how to choose one of these that is nuanced in your budget, which we know is so important. So I'll let Christy introduce herself real quick, but I want to get to just a few logistics before we start here. We are live on a variety of different channels here, and we are streaming through a platform that aggregates all of the comments for us. So with this conversation, our mission is to infuse some transparency and honesty, some provider agnostic feedback when it comes to how do you select the best system for your organization, because it really is going to be what is best for you and your needs, not what everybody else says you should do. So that's our goal with this. A huge part of that is actually your feedback. We've seen that a lot through the comments this week. And I know Christy and myself are both really grateful for that engagement, because it just shows the community how many options and really what are the rights of the clients to ask those questions, to really be a part of their overall transformation process. So with that said, go ahead and pop your comments or votes wherever you're joining from today, and we can see them right here on the side. We'll address them, we'll bring them up, and we'll kind of have some audience engagement in this conversation. We are going over two matchups today, and then we will kind of set the scene for our final, which you guys will actually choose, because you've just been such an amazing it's been kind of head to head. Christy and I were just talking about how spicy it was, and we did the Infor versus Epicor poll on her channel. So we're going to go ahead and do that again when it comes to the final winner, but we will give you our takes just so that, you know, we can influence you in some sort of way. But
makes it fun.
I know, right? Right. But with that, Christy, will you give us just a quick overview of yourself, your experience, and Christy Barber Consulting?
Yep. So again, I'm Christy Barber. I'm glad to be with you guys today and talking about all things software. I have been in the financial technology industry for 20 years. Seems like a really long time, but I've also been doing a lot with finances, doing some operational type financial work where we're looking at things just from a standpoint of knowing how the overall health is of your organization. So doing some fractional CFO work, and then that kind of morphs into a lot of the technology so that we can look and make sure that all of the data is lined up and we can make good decisions. So been doing a lot of that, predominantly worked in the small business world my entire life and family-owned businesses as well.
Yes, Christy is an expert in entrepreneurship. She has the coolest stories from her selection, because we all know our SMB clients, they wear a lot of hats, which is why the stakes are so high when it comes to selecting the right software for their organization. A lot of times a failed implementation can mean you have to close your doors. So we're here to kind of take you through how do you really navigate understanding what software is for you and why. So with that, welcome everyone in the comments. We've got Sam from Pittsburgh, we've got Mick from Denver, and we'd love to know where all of you are joining us from. So if you could just pop that in the comments right now, and we'll get into our bracket. So I'm going to show you what our updated March Madness bracket looks like. Hopefully, if you did a bracket alongside with us, your bracket did not bust. But this is what it looks like if you see kind of the side of my screen here. We started with 16 head to head. We went to our Elite 8, and we are now in our Final 4. If you want to see any of those or replay any of those, I invite you to go to Christy's LinkedIn channel, and you can replay all of the videos. They're also available on her YouTube channel, which is just at Christy Barber Consulting, and you can find all of those there. Last week, we covered NetSuite versus Shopify. NetSuite came out on top versus QuickBooks. Sage squeaked out on top on that one. We had Workday over UKG, and UKG came out on top. So kind of the battle of the HCMs systems there. And then we had our big one, which is Infor versus Epicor, which, if you know these two systems, is incredibly challenging to just kind of give a face value which one is better, because they're very similar yet very different. Very sophisticated, great partnership network. You can't go wrong with either of these systems, but we did let you guys vote on that, and you voted Infor as the winner to that. So thank you for your engagement there. So today we're going to go through NetSuite versus Sage, and then we are going to go through UKG versus Infor. So those are the ones that we're going to cover and do kind of a more in-depth analysis. Before we get that started, Christy, any kind of key findings or learnings that you've had from this session or conversation so far?
I think it's been really fun just talking with a lot of the vendors that have been getting pretty involved with this and hearing their takes on things, how they service this industry and this size client. And also looking at things, I think they've done a really good job of bringing up some perspectives in the comments, telling us about things of, hey, you want to make sure implementation is a huge part of this. And we've talked about that a lot in previous recordings, of how your implementation partner is key to making it a success in a lot of ways. And if you don't have that, it's not going to work, because it can be the right solution, but the wrong implementation partner. So I think there's been some really good comments, and I've really appreciated everybody chiming in on that and sharing their expertise.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been a really fun kind of community session. And a lot of times we get this misconception that being provider agnostic means that we don't like vendors or we don't work well with them. And it couldn't be more the opposite. Mostly we are a partner to vendors to help them understand what is the full needs of the business. In things like, especially in SMB demos, we are a huge asset to the vendor conversation, because we help give them succinct demo scripts, we give them requirements, kind of set them up for success to showcase their system. So I think that's great. And I know, Christy, I think you plan to have some vendors on in the month of April to kind of follow up on this conversation.
Yeah. And so they'll be able to take it another level deeper than what we're doing, and really talking about the way that they do things. So I'm really looking forward to that. And for everybody that's on today and will listen to this, we got a lot of great things lined up for next month.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, with that, let's get into it. So Ganesh asked, what is the agenda of this session? So today we're going to talk about two matchups. We're going to have Sage versus NetSuite, and we're going to have UKG versus Infor. So we're going to start with Sage versus NetSuite, and we have kind of a more in-depth analysis. So let me just give you kind of a quick overview of the two different systems here, and then we can kind of go from there. So we have NetSuite and Sage, both ERP systems in the small to medium size business. NetSuite is owned by Oracle, so it has a lot of that backing when it comes to large ERP functionalities. Also, Sage focuses a lot in financial management. It looks at accounting, analytics, planning tools. It's particularly strong in SaaS, but so is NetSuite, which, again, this one is a very hard one. NetSuite has been in the SaaS space for a very, very long time. So a lot of times when we look at other providers that are kind of just entering the SaaS space, they can be kind of still working out the kinks, even though they're pushing you to more of a cloud-based platform, because that ultimately makes the vendor more money. It's better for their bottom line, that subscription-based formatting. NetSuite has been, doing that for a very, very long time already. So there's less risk about, hey, we won't have the same functionalities that we had when it came to on-prem. So I kind of have a features list comparison that I want to go through that you could kind of check me on if you want to here, Christy. And so when we have cloud-based, we have yes for both. Do they have a mobile app? We have yes for both. We have multi-entity considerations, or consolidation as we call it. Sage is yes, but it's more limited. Oracle NetSuite is fully integrated. Inventory management, which we talk a lot about, and if you've listened to our previous conversations, is a huge piece, especially for our SMB clients, because that's kind of a very common thread of, hey, you've outgrown QuickBooks, so you need an ERP that does inventory management. So Sage Intacct has kind of basic support. They absolutely do it, don't get me wrong. But NetSuite has a bit more comprehensive support. When we look at things like CRM, Sage integrates with Salesforce typically, but it will integrate with other CRMs. Oracle NetSuite has it built in, so they have a built-in CRM. I will say that CRM is a loose word, so it depends on what you need to utilize the CRM for.
Yeah,
In that,
exactly. Otherwise, you'll want to integrate with something
yeah.
else that's more
Yeah.
robust.
So I personally would not use NetSuite CRM just because there's better options out there if that's a need for you. If a customer relationship management tool is really what you need. Multi-language support, they do a lot more languages in NetSuite. They do have some languages in Sage. When it comes to reporting capabilities, they have extensive reporting, but when we look at kind of the main ones that we need, we've got batched processing for Sage. We have customizable reports. Oracle NetSuite has real-time supporting, real-time reporting, and then kind of those more extensive BI dashboards. Sage still has those too, but NetSuite is kind of known for their business intelligence like observation suites that you can really see that real-time reporting. So when we look at kind of things specific to projects, project accounting, that is an optional add-on for Sage. It's built in for NetSuite. Again, I would say it's built in to an extent. It depends on what your needs are for that area. And then when we have just overall support network, NetSuite has been known to struggle a little bit just because of the bandwidth that they have with Oracle. And Sage has been known a little bit more in the industry to be more customer focused, but NetSuite is also a great option for that. You just need to make sure that the consultant that you're working with has that relationship. It totally depends on the local support team. So anything on the kind of functionality list that you would add to that analysis?
I think one thing I really like is both solutions, again, started out as financial software. And so they
Mhm,
really have built a great foundation for all of that. Again, we're looking at Sage Intacct versus one of the larger Sage solutions like an X3 that has
mhm,
more comprehensive financial solutions in it. So the Sage Intacct is more, hey, we're just getting started, we're graduating from
mhm,
QuickBooks. So there's certain things to look at that versus the NetSuite solution has a lot of that built in because they don't have a in between model before you would jump to a full
mhm.
NetSuite version. And for that part, I think you get a lot better, not better, you get a lot more out of the box with a
Mhm.
NetSuite a lot of times in that because it
Absolutely.
has the other pieces in there compared to Sage Intacct is just going to be very heavy financial and some inventory to it with some purchasing. And then you get a little bit more out of NetSuite because you're going to have a full operations, CRM, all of that stuff. So I think that's one thing to keep in mind when you're evaluating those solutions. What do you
Mhm.
really need for your small business?
Absolutely. And that really brings me to my next two pieces, which is pricing and customization. So for pricing, Sage Intacct is going to be cheaper all the time than NetSuite because of what you just said, right?
Yeah.
The comprehensive offerings. When you come into looking at these prices, Sage Intacct starts at $425 a month with user licenses at $210 per month. And NetSuite starts around 1,000. It depends. So don't come for me. Okay. With user licensing ranging from 99 to 199 per month. Again, depending on your packaging. Software licensing can be one of the most confusing things to go through.
Mhm.
So when you are actually evaluating these, you want to be absolutely positive that you could say in your sleep what the total cost of ownership is going to be for your licensing structure. But 9 times out of 10, Sage Intacct is going to be cheaper than NetSuite. Would you
Yeah.
agree?
Yeah, I would agree. And there's also something new that Sage has been offering. It's one of their BPO programs, where that is if you find an accounting firm, which is usually a NetSuite Oracle partner, there's a way that you can bring down your NetSuite costs where then this CPA firm is managing a lot of the financials for you. And
That's
it can
cool.
get a little bit more even pricing with Sage when you're first starting out. And then the
Mhm.
nice part is if you outgrow that BPO, then the licensing just turns over where you fully own it in that ERP setup. And so that's a really good thing. It is expensive
Mhm.
still, because like anything is going to be when you make that jump from QuickBooks, there's sticker
Mhm.
shock.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
even with that, I think you're running about 2,000 or so a month
Mhm.
to make sure. And again, there's added service in that because the CPA firm is doing a lot of
Absolutely.
additional work for you. But I had a client evaluate that earlier this year because they were getting to the point where QuickBooks, they were just, it was causing pain because they were
Mhm.
outgrowing it. And
Mhm.
this BPO route made a lot more sense for them to go down because they couldn't
Mhm.
afford a full ERP yet. And the owner was familiar with NetSuite, like the brand over Sage. With there's nothing wrong with that. Again, it comes down to
Mhm.
preferences and what it can do. And so that is something for the SMB community to know is NetSuite does have this. It's not really advertised very much, and there's a select number of partners that do provide this additional service.
Absolutely. And I think that's a perfect example of why having someone that's in your corner as your advocate is so, so critical. Because if we are just walking around on the street or just Googling, we would have no idea that option even existed. So that's why it's so critical to really understand what's out there. And I love these questions coming in. I'm going to get to them in just a second. So just stay with me here. I'm going to get to them at the end here. I want to go through a few other things, so customization, which I like didn't even want to include this one, but I think it's important to talk about because I personally think that the less customization you can do as an SMB, the better, because it's a lot to manage and it's expensive and you don't know who owns those custom integrations. And you can get into really kind of tricky spots if you don't have someone advocating for you in that contracting. And a lot of times we can fall down this slippery slope of like, let's customize everything. And
Yes.
it's like, no, no, just because you can doesn't mean you should. So when we
Mhm.
look at customization with these two tools, NetSuite has a customizations tool. It's called Suite Cloud Platform. And really what you can do with this type of thing is look at how can you make your system the best fit for you, remembering that you're going to need someone internally that can manage all of that. When we look at things like Sage Intact, because it is a more basic system that will require additional costs or upgrades, through customizations. They have like a platform services that gives you that opportunity to customize. So if you are a unique business that's going to require some customizations, you really need to one, work with a transformation advocate in this conversation like Christy does for her clients that can, go and create these packages and work with the teams, but also understand that customization is a whole new ball game when you look at ERP.
Yeah.
So the last thing that I'll kind of do is I pulled some like industry recognition, so you didn't have to just hear it from Christy and myself. So Gartner is one of the top industry analysts for our space, for the software space. So NetSuite is recognized as a leader in that marketplace, while Sage Intact is kind of considered more of a visionary, and it's really focused in financial tools. So the one thing I'll say about Gartner ranking is you buy them. So think about it just like, any other industry award, you're going to purchase them. NetSuite is going to have more financial money with, Oracle being in that conversation to buy their way onto that list. So though I can encourage you to always have those industry analysts and review their materials, just remember that that is a business and we're paying for a lot of placements there. I also like G2 reviews because they're user generated reviews. So Sage Intact actually performs better than NetSuite in overall use and reporting capabilities. But NetSuite is really preferred for bigger financial organizations because of its auditing capabilities. So that's kind of my overview, my more in-depth analysis. Do you want to add anything, Christy, before I get to these audience questions?
Yeah, one thing I want to add is just going back to license structure. Something that Sage Intacct does is it does allow some view only licenses, and you can buy them in bulk, which comes in really handy if you just
Yeah.
have people in your organization that you want them to view reports and view things, but not make any changes. Because we all know sometimes, you as the owner, it can be overwhelming to get into the solution, but you want to be able to see a dashboard and run different reports or whatnot. Those types of licensings give you that without going in and making a lot of changes or having to know the system. NetSuite is all named users, and so it
Mhm.
just looks a little different, but you can make your role in there different view only to report. So it really narrows it down compared to Sage makes it a little bit easier as you're just getting started. And I have a client looking at that right now, and they're, about 4 to 5 users or whatnot. And again, it's significantly cheaper than NetSuite, and that kind of helps them with their budgeting and
Mhm.
all of those things that come with it. And one thing to add on that too is being able to pull out the data. Both solutions do that really well. And so you can pair it up with a Power BI or some other tool
Mhm.
to be able to get extensive dashboards that the solutions don't necessarily have out of the box. And so
Mhm.
I have a lot of clients always asking about that. Hey, I want to make a data lake and then create all these KPIs on my own that are particular to my industry. And you can do that with both solutions.
Yeah, absolutely. And that leads me to some of these questions, which these are great questions. Definitely keep them coming, and give your thoughts. I have a few opinions above too that we'll get to. So, which platform gives real time visibility into financials and certain industry KPIs without relying on manual reporting?
And both of them are real time, which
Mhm.
is great. So anytime you enter something in, your dashboard will refresh, it will show you, or if you're running a report, it shows you. So with that, that is one cool thing that you get when you're
Mhm.
moving to a cloud solution.
Absolutely.
And it is something that you get with a newer solution versus older ones where there's a batch multiple times per day, or there's a
Mhm.
batch just at the end of the day, and you get to see all of your data inputs the following day. So they both allow real time.
Absolutely. And definitely a good question, especially for our SMB community. If you're looking at an ERP that does not give you visibility into those real-time financials, you need to really think hard about what you're paying for, because an
Mhm.
ERP system in 2025 should always give you that opportunity to see that data, especially when you're looking at like 4 core enterprise goals. And a lot of times what we can do in these situations is align enterprise goals with what the actual system reports on. But your SI isn't just going to do that out of the goodness of their hearts, right? They need someone that's in there being like, hey guys, this is what the client wants to see. This is how we need to kind of scope and monitor the dashboards. They need these types of things, and that's where someone in your corner kind of comes in handy. There is this reporting super cool and real time? That's awesome, but does it tell me what I need to know?
Mhm. And still making things easy. How many
Yeah.
times do you see people that are still on green screens and older solutions where they're still able to extract the data out and they're putting it in a Tableau or a Power BI, but
Mhm.
there's all this added work to make sure that the data that's in there is semi-current to be able
Mhm.
to reflect what's going on during the day. And I would say for probably the SMB world, you usually don't have as much of a problem being on a green screen and then needing to move to something, but it's more the mid-sized companies that have been around that are on older systems. They've been there 15, 20 years, and starting to feel the pain, and we need to move to something current.
Yeah, absolutely. Or their data is just absolute garbage because
Yeah.
it's been bent and broke, and
Mhm.
trying to, especially if we have people that there's not a lot of transparency in the organization, they're trying to get the data to make it say something that it just simply doesn't say. So we need to look at how effective that data actually is before we move it to a SaaS-based
Mhm.
system. So definitely a great piece. Is one of these platforms better depending on your industry?
I don't think so. I think they both play really well with all industries. I haven't seen anything where one really comes in and you're like, "Oh gosh, no, they shouldn't work." I
Mhm.
think because finance is finance, it makes it very easy to say, hey, I can do everything that you need this to do. Where it starts to get a little bit different is the other parts of the organization of how are you fulfilling orders? Are you manufacturing? Do you need the CRM? Do you need all these other things? And that's where you start needing various modules that plug on, or even a partner that's developed IP specific for
Mhm.
that industry. I had a
Mhm.
client last year that was in retail space. So they were
Mhm.
e-commerce and brick and mortar stores.
Mhm.
They ended up going NetSuite, but they needed a NetSuite partner that understood the ins and outs of
Mhm.
retail. And that partner had built a whole bunch of IP, which then helped make it a lot easier for them to integrate their systems and get things out of the box, because this partner had worked so well on building that.
Mhm.
Where on a Sage Intacct, you may not necessarily get things like that, because again, it's just a financial software. As you graduate to another Sage solution, then you're looking at those same things that NetSuite would have at their beginning level.
Absolutely. That makes so much sense. And I think industry is important. It is something that you want to consider. Like Christy said, there is sometimes where you have a specific industry, like food and beverage. We have another client that's in A&D, and that's a big consideration for them. Aerospace and defense is, a lot of people like Infor, for example, has a great A&D solution, and all of these different nuances that come into what does that mean for your industry. So when you are considering going through a selection, industry is something that you absolutely want to consider. So when you're sitting down looking at your requirements and you're doing that with your consultant or your transformation coach, you really need to understand what are my options here to be industry specific, knowing that if you have like a certain industry specific software, it's always going to be more expensive
Always,
because
yeah.
it does exactly what you need it to do, in certain ways, but not the comprehensive features. So that's kind of always the double-edged sword that we help our clients through is like, hey, do you want an ERP system or do you want just this specific industry system to do one specific thing very well? Not No choice is bad, right? You just need to understand the pros and cons to each different area in which you're going to spend your money.
hmm
So,
And that kind of ties in with Sam's comment
mhm,
here, is at the end of the day, the best ERP is the one that aligns with the company's strategies and process. And it is. And that's why it's so important that you walk through the process of gathering requirements to really know what does your company need to have this system do out of the box versus customized or third party solutions. And then making sure that that system can today and long term, along with the SI, align with the company's overall strategy and process, because you don't
mhm,
want to go through this process again in a couple of years. You want to be able to keep it for 10 or 15 years.
mhm. Absolutely. And it be able to update, and continue to be innovative. So, I'll do one more here and then we'll crown a winner because we're right kind of halfway through our stream here. So, which platform has better support for a small business that might not have a full IT team yet?
This would come down to which partner you pick.
Mhm.
And so both solutions will have that depending on the SI again, but you will want to evaluate, do their support packages, does that align with our company's needs? Can
Mhm.
they step in when I've seen some clients, they kind of go down the road of implementation, and they get to a point of, okay, we've hit our knowledge where we don't know anymore to this point. Can you, the
Mhm.
SI, jump in now and then kind of carry us through, but then train us also on how to continually do this type of work? And that comes down to, again, just having a really great partner that can understand what your business needs and can help train and fill in those gaps.
Absolutely. And that's why having, again, I know I keep saying like having that advocate, but I kid you not, we could go implement one of these up in the PMW here in the States and have an amazing experience. And then go do one in South Florida and Miami
It
and
would
have a totally different experience. Same system, same functionalities, same ish requirements, right? But it all comes down to who is your local support team, who's going to be the person that you're talking to on the day to day. So having that culture fit, so critical to
yeah.
making sure you have an effective working relationship. So,
And to kind of marry all that together too is it's that long-term relationship too.
Mhm.
You're not gonna, your partner's not gonna leave you at the end of the implementation and be like, okay, good luck, hope this all works. There's somebody that's gonna stay on with you until you outgrow the system or you need
Absolutely.
to do an upgrade to the solution that you have. And that's a big part of why both of us are so picky on
Mhm.
choosing the right partner to come in and really evaluating who they are, who they've worked with, and can they align with you, the client's needs, but also do they know your industry to be able to kind of bring all of it in and make the software or be able to get the most out of the software for
Mhm.
you.
Absolutely. We could usually vibe that out in about 5
Yep.
seconds being in the conversation. Like, literally how they say hi, it's gonna be like, "All right, this is gonna be painful
This will
for
be
me,"
good or
or
bad.
yeah, yeah, or "I have to sit through 10-hour demos with this person." Yes,
Hmm.
can't wait. No. All right. So, 2 great options, right? Different to an extent, right? We've got
Hmm.
one that's kind of more of an industry titan. We've got one that's kind of more of a stepping stone, but certainly offers great functionality. We've got two SaaS-based systems, very innovative, gives you that real-time reporting. We've got a cost consideration in here. So, with that, Christy, who are you going to choose to enter the finals on this side?
I think for this one, Sage Intacct kind of makes sense because if an SMB is outgrowing QuickBooks, a lot of times you are from the financial point of view, but you're using ancillary solutions to take care of everything else. And this could be a good stepping point until you need to move to a full ERP
Mhm,
because you can get really clean financial data this way.
mhm.
And so I would go probably that route, given also again, there is no right answer to this
Yes.
because it's
Mhm,
based on your company. And if you're just wanting to slightly grow, then maybe, and you like NetSuite, then maybe NetSuite's BPO program is a better solution to you because you know you want to eventually move to NetSuite's ERP solution.
mhm,
Where,
mhm,
hey, you like Sage Intacct, you're like, well, it just makes sense because I'm going to go to Sage X3 when I
mhm,
start to outgrow this. So there's a lot of different dynamics that come into that. But for this, I'm going to say Sage Intacct just because this gives people a really good starting point when they're coming off QuickBooks.
Absolutely. I would concur with that, and I think the biggest reason for me is money and budget and capital and cash
Hmm.
is so important to a small to medium-sized business. It is absolutely critical, especially within the business landscape we have today with things like new tariffs, issues with supply chain, all kinds of different areas that can really throw you off, and you need to have that nest egg of financial health in order to be successful and to have that ability to grow. So I think those micro steps in technology is so critical, and Sage is much more kind of going to meet you where you are financially, give you the right stepping stones and get you to where you need to be. I also think, bigger comprehensive ERP systems are kind of moving away from what we're looking at for our bigger industries. It might not be so for the small business community because a lot of times we're looking for that ERP standardization. But as you grow, you find the biggest companies run two different ERP systems. And there's lots of different ways that they can get there. But Sage Intact gives you the habits and the behaviors to kind of practice that fiscally responsible technology investments.
Hmm. And it's true gap accounting where QuickBooks is
Yes.
not. This
Mhm.
kind of forces you to keep in line with things. And so that's really helpful as well for companies that are kind of moving to that next phase.
Absolutely. All right. So going into the finals is Sage Intact. Congratulations, Sage. Best of luck to you. So next up, first of all, kudos to the audience for all of those great questions. Keep those coming. And then your thoughts as well. Because remember, you guys will ultimately crown the winner of our March Madness series. So next, we are looking at more of an in-depth analysis of UKG versus Infor. So for UKG, kind of newer to this conversation for small businesses because it's typically been an HCM type of focused solution, but has really shown, at least I've seen them make a huge push in the last couple years to really enter the SMB marketplace and show up as a really, really good partner. So let's kind of go into an overview of the two here. So we've got UKG, which is known to be a comprehensive HR management platform that really focuses in a lot of those HR more important functionalities. We're talking about payroll, benefits, talent management, workforce analytics. So if you're a big people organization, this is a great choice to kind of look at. It's rated extremely high for its user-friendly interface and its robust tool sets. I would say also it has a very strong focus on AI-driven insights and those employee self-service capabilities, which I really like. To if you have, an organization where you are in retail and you have a lot of brick and mortar stores and you need to do a certain training in those types of stores that you need to do kind of on demand. It gives a lot of those options. Or if they're trying to learn how to use the point of sale system and they just need to know this one kind of micro lesson, it offers a lot of those different pieces as well. I will say it is an ERP system. It's just always kind of been known for the robust HR management platform. It does things like scheduling time tracking, compliance management, and it's really, really good at streamlining workflows. But it can be criticized for its learning curve. So a lot of times it's a system that people have never seen before. So you just need to understand that when it comes to that. Pretty common in SMB ERP training to see a lot of these different pieces of resistance. Again, that's why you need someone there kind of coaching you through how you're going to implement it effectively. So for Infor, we're specifically looking at Cloud Suite here. So this is their comprehensive ERP solution. It has a lot of integrated capabilities, finance, HR, supply chain management. It's really more recognized to being giving that real-time visibility, automation, and then of course its customization options. So some key differences I'll point out, and then I'll hand it over to you, Christy, to kind of give us your take on it. The user interface and just overall experience, UKG is generally praised for that, while N4 can be more complex. It's a lot of times focused in complex manufacturing or something like that that can involve a steeper learning curve. HR and workforce management. So UKG Pro specifically is a more comprehensive HR suite. And then Infor HCM focuses on more global HR capabilities. So it has operational modules, workforce management, a lot of the same things that UKG offers, but it is on a bigger scale. Remember, Infor can scale up to those very big organizations. And then finally, I'll kind of touch on ERP capabilities and then turn it over to Christy. So for ERP capabilities, Cloud Suite is going to offer a broader range of capabilities, including more financial focus, which we've kind of been a theme of this conversation, and in supply chain management or manufacturing. It does a lot of CRM integrations. UKG does too, but not as many as Infor, making it usually a better fit for a business that's in need of a very comprehensive operational solution. So two great products kind of in different industries here that we see. So definitely an interesting matchup.
Yeah.
These two. I love that they both got here. And thank you again for everyone who voted in our Infor versus Epicor. But when these two go head to head, it's kind of a unique business situation because they kind of play in different areas and different industries, but still both great options.
Yeah. And they also can support each other too.
Yes.
So that's
Yes.
the
Good point.
interesting part of it all is you could have UKG for all of your HCM and you've already had it as a standalone and now you're
Mhm.
moving to Infor and you just plug them together and now you get to keep the solution and it's bringing in those data points. And so that's a great way to look at UKG as it can go with anything or it can be by itself as well. So it adds a lot of value for business owners.
What about pricing? What do you think for these two are a little harder on the pricing side because they have so many different tiers. That's why it's always kind of hard to give ballpark pricing around this. And if someone does give you ballpark pricing, you shouldn't work with them because they need to understand like what you need and what your requirements are before anybody's throwing out numbers, right? But I would assume, and this is, totally an assumption, UKG could probably be a little bit cheaper. But again, it offers a completely different kind of competencies when it comes to the system it's supporting.
Mhm. Yeah, it does. And you look at Infor and it's offering a more full solution too. So you're getting everything from when a sale comes in to when you ship it out the door. UKG is a little bit different with some financials and then the HCM part of it, where
Mhm.
you don't get all of the operational pieces. You don't have quality, you don't have
Mhm.
necessarily the CRM side to UKG.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So anything else to kind of add to these comparisons before I get into the questions here?
No, I think you're good. I think they're so different and that
Yeah.
so it's hard as compared to what we just did with a NetSuite
Yeah.
versus Intact because they are more on an equal playing field
Yes.
because of what they offer. These guys, it's a full ERP versus, semi ERP, but a really great HCM solution that a small business could potentially grow into.
Absolutely. And it's almost like UKG is kind of like the Cinderella story here that we see in March Madness a lot, but definitely can play in this. I think it's always helpful to consider. I know they beat out Workday last round, but it's always helpful to consider an HCM as your core system if you have those requirements. There's nothing wrong with doing that. And a lot of times our industry has said, it's just an ACM, just an HCM, just a HCM, just an HCM. And that's not true. It does not matter at all what system it is. It matters if it best supports your needs, kind of like those industry specific solutions we talked a lot about earlier. So let's get into these questions, Christy.
Yep.
How seamless are the integrations with each platform?
I think they're both fairly seamless because they've been built with the open API. And so you can integrate the data points over. Again, you have to rely on your system integrator to help with that. But I've seen that it's not something that's extremely difficult. When you are doing integrations, there's a lot of testing that goes in because you have to make sure the data is flowing in, the data is going back out if it's bi-directional, and that it's populating where it should be, and what to do when things are broke because sometimes the API feed can break and all you got to go back in and just remap something.
Mhm.
I mean, you see this with all
Absolutely.
platforms, anything that has API. You even see it on the most simplest side of,
Mhm.
hey, ADP needs to integrate with QuickBooks, and there was
Mhm.
a new GL that was added, and
Yeah.
now ADP is like, wait a second, I need to
Yeah.
map to this. You didn't tell me where to go. And so
Mhm.
it can't bring over something. It's the same thing for this. And so it's always just being aware of if there are any mapping changes, be aware of what that is and make those so that you don't have any breakdowns in the API data.
Yeah, absolutely. And integrations are great. But just remember the more integrations that you have, the more fragile
Hmm.
and just vulnerable your system is. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't have integrations. That means you need to go in that with that awareness, right? The open eyes. Every time I push an update, an integration is going to break. So I need to have a checklist around how I test this, a quality control governance that we follow to be sure that you know how to do that. Just remember in our SMB teams, unless they're using a managed service provider, a lot of times they are not a huge team. So we need to make sure that it's within their bandwidth. Famous last words are, oh, no worries. We'll have these 300 integrations and we'll just check them every single month. No,
Mhm.
you won't. There's absolutely no way that you're doing that. And it's my job to tell you that in this type of thing. It might sound good, and software vendors are very good with kind of breezing over their integrations in those demos. But what you're going to want to do in that demo script is like, prove it, show me.
Mhm.
I want to see how it works, and I want to see how it's managed. And that's why you have someone like Christy in the room with you, being like, hey, Infor, can you show me how you integrate with HubSpot so that we can understand really what that looks like? How do you integrate with Shopify? Those integrations, you think about it like the more and more you wear your favorite sweater, right? The more and more you use them, the more and more they degrade. And you
Mhm.
need to make sure that those are continually maintained within your IT team. So great question. And good morning, David. How is the future? I always love when our Australian audience joins us on our streams here. We always try and hit those audiences, but here in the States, that's always our hardest time zone to hit. So it's always exciting to have that. And if you don't follow David, just a shameless plug, I highly recommend it. Some great process thought leadership there. So speaking of processes and streamlining that, David's definitely a leader in our industry. So we're honored you join us. All right, Christy. So with these two kind of head to head, who are you going to take through Infor Cloud Suite or UKG?
I would go Infor Cloud Suite just because it's a full solution.
Mhm.
And again, the Cloud Suite, and you'll hear it a lot, is it's positioned more for the mid markets, but
Mhm.
there are a lot of small companies that are on it. I've worked with companies that are 30 million, 40 million, and they're working just fine in Infor's Cloud Suite Industrial. And so it gives them everything they need, and it can grow with them for a long period of time. And that's
Mhm.
a great part of it. And then when they get to the point where they need a comprehensive HCM
Mhm.
solution, then UKG is a great one to bring
Yeah.
in. But most smaller companies don't have that many employees working for
Mhm.
them where they need a full HCM system. It's usually their payroll solution is fulfilling those needs, and then they're using some Excel spreadsheets to then manage, hey, do people have their forklift certifications? Do they have whatever other certification that needs to be updated? And so for that, I think Infor makes the most sense to move forward on this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you have to in this situation. As much as in the SMB community, we always love a good underdog, and
Mhm.
UKG is an excellent system. I love specifically about them their support from the top down. They are very client focused when it comes to just how they service their community, as is Infor. But we just we see a lot of those on the front line. There are people software, they're a people business. So definitely something to consider if you do need some of those HCM competencies. It's just not something we see a lot of times in the SMB world, because it usually is when we're into the thousands, sometimes tens
Mhm.
of thousands employees, where we need to be kind of managing those to that certain level. So, all right, we got our
Got it.
champions. We've got our champion. So I'm just going to do a quick overview of those kind of head to head. And then Christy and I can give you kind of our take. And then we are going to launch another poll. So after this, we'll launch that poll directly following this conversation. So be sure to go over to Christy's channel. You can find her on LinkedIn specifically, and you can vote for your winner. Next week, when we kind of do a wrap up conversation and then talk about how do you actually start implementing these effectively, then we'll kind of give you the winner, and we'll give you a little trophy. So with that, let's go into these two. So we've got Infor Cloud Suite versus Sage Intacct. So I won't give you kind of like the big overview of functionalities because we already went through those. But we have Infor Cloud Suite. Now you have to remember there's Infor, like there's Sightline too, for manufacturing and distribution. There's Infor Cloud Suite financials. There's a lot of different levels to Infor Cloud Suite. While Sage Intacct is a bit more kind of cut, right? It's a bit more lean on that level, where it really is kind of a new stepping stone into how do you get kind of your first ERP solution. very focused on a true financial system when it looks at that. So things to consider that's very different for these types of things is industry focused. So really Sage is a small to medium sized business system, period. It
Yeah,
does
it
not,
doesn't go anything bigger
right,
than that. Yeah.
right. It does not scale up to any of those. No, definitely jump in if you want to, Christy. I'm sure everyone's sick of me just, rambling off these facts. But so when we look at something like Infor Cloud Suite, they can manage large healthcare facilities, massive distribution and process manufacturing, where we have variances and all kinds of different pieces on supply chain. So they're much bigger than Sage Intacct is. They also have those financial modules, but really focus a lot in manufacturing execution. They offer, MES features so much, which is manufacturing execution system, and really supply chain management. When it comes to integration, there's lots of integration opportunities for both of these. The one that's going to integrate more is just Infor, but we always have, APIs we can do. Really extensive integration for Sage is going to be Salesforce and ADP. So those are going to be the big ones there. Great security features on those two, and then the pricing. N4 is likely going to be a bit more expensive because it is more comprehensive. They are both subscription based, but the Sage really does they're the market leader. I don't know if you agree, Christy, but I think they're the market leader in kind of flexibility pricing for
Yeah,
small to medium sized business.
I would agree.
Cool. And then when we come to things like market share, Infor is very popular. They've been a leading ERP system for a very long time, especially along large manufacturers and distribution companies. Sage is still not as well known. They've put a lot of energy less into marketing and, having the coolest conferences where, all kinds of different people, Beyonce is performing, into really thinking about how can I make this system financially affordable for my SMB community. So two different approaches there.
Mhm.
One's kind of, bigger, louder. The other one is just really focusing on what are the options for my customer base. And then when it comes to usability and scalability, pretty even matched here. Both are very user friendly. Infor Cloud Suite is going to have a steeper learning curve because it's bigger. Scalability Infor Cloud Suite's going to win that one, just because it's designed for really larger, more complex needs. While Sage Intacct is really a stepping stone for those medium-sized businesses. So those are our finals. I think it's very interesting that we have kind of one of our bigger ERP leaders, and then we have kind of one that's more of kind of like that you see as like a friend to the SMB community, right?
Yeah.
No one's ever come to us and been like, those Sage guys, they're the worst. I've never, ever heard that. And believe me, people are the first to tell us when
Mhm.
something is going wrong with the vendors because they know we're going to call them and be like, what's the deal, man? So I think it's definitely an interesting matchup here when it comes to Infor versus Sage. Do you want to give kind of a preview to which one you would choose, Christy, or do you just want
I
to
don't
leave?
even know, honestly, but I think one thing to add to it is you'll see if you're more on a really small job
Mhm,
shop and you're
mhm,
producing just a lot of the same parts. Some of the tier 4 solutions
mhm,
are ones that handle all of the operations, and then they rely on a Sage to do the financials, and they
mhm,
talk to Sage. And so that's something to think about too. Is I've had a couple of those clients that have gone that route where it they've kind of built their own composite type solution where they have Sage as the financials, they have a very specific type ERP or operational part of an ERP solution. And then that way they're kind of just plugging and playing 4 or 5 different solutions together to be able to get what they need in a price point that makes sense for their organization at that time before moving to something bigger. And so I'll add that to there if anybody's listening and they're not sure because they think, oh, well, Sage Intacct, that's just the financials. I'm manufacturing, but I can't afford, a larger solution. when you are evaluating these smaller ones, again, that is one of the benefits of Sage Intacct is it will integrate with a lot of these and you're still able to get the data that you need.
Absolutely. Yep. It's definitely, this would be a business consideration between these two. You're likely not going to grow out of Infor. Like,
Right.
you really probably won't unless you are, becoming a global complex. Even then,
And even then they can
yeah,
they have other larger
yes,
solutions that are for
yeah,
the billion-dollar industries. They're like, "Hey," not that it's easy to migrate over there,
right.
but they
Oh, yeah.
have it if you wanna stay in that world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So definitely two very different ones. We do have a question here. If you don't have a full IT team, which one is easier to implement and then manage long term?
Well, they're both gonna be again, if
Mhm,
you have a good partner, you'll be able to do this. Sage is gonna
mhm,
be a lot easier to implement and manage because you're just doing financials. And normally with a Sage Intacct, you can be live in about 2.5, maybe 3 months max.
mhm,
Where when you're going in Infor, that's a full installation, that's 9 to 12
mhm,
months. And a lot of that is both solutions will have the partner that's helping you do things. You're also on a cloud base. So you have somebody that's managing. You don't have to have an IT managing the solution, but you do need your IT team, even if they're small, 1 to 2 people, they need to be able to provision new licenses, get people set up, know
mhm,
how to run reports, all of those types of things. So those are things to consider with, hey, if I have a really small IT team or none at all, then how can my partner support me long term in
mhm.
filling that gap until it makes sense for me to hire a team to be on, be on the payroll.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think this is definitely an effective line of thinking. And I love that we're kind of changing the narrative of like, what do I need, not what do I need to do to scale up to meet the system. You need to remember that this is all about a few considerations. Your budget is going to be a huge one in this conversation, your overall needs as an organization. Are you a heavy manufacturing organization? Are you doing things like distribution? Are you in food and beverage? And I think the challenge here is you're looking at two very different poles of what it means to be an SMB. That's why this market
Yeah.
is by far the hardest because there's a big difference between a $5 million business and a $500 million business. There are wildly different needs. And these two, could they service both? Yes. But you're going to look at the N4 side for more of a $500 million business. You're going to look at the Sage Intact side for more of a $5 million business depending on the needs, right? So you're really hitting all the different corners here. I think for a true SMB, I'm just going to throw it out there. I would choose Sage Intact because I'm just so financially focused on the robbery sometimes that we see in this industry that I would pull that one out before I needed to look at
Mhm.
something like an Infor. But I mean, there's caveats to all of those. I just want to, give you like a feeling like we, gave you some sort of vote in here, but we will put the poll on Christy's channel. What you need to do in this. This was a fun exercise to get to know the systems. Find someone to help you with your selection. If you do nothing else, that is the best investment because sometimes you don't even know if you need a new ERP system
Mhm.
or not. And if you call a vendor directly, they're going to most definitely tell you that you need one without keeping kind of your best interest in mind. So with that, Christy, anything else to kind of add to kind of what businesses can do today to start to prepare or look at a new selection?
I think the biggest thing is going back is calling a consultant, bringing somebody
Yeah.
in to help evaluate. And I think that's what's been so beneficial with my clients and being able to help guide them because sometimes they're just a little too early. Where
Hmm.
the solutions they're on today make sense to stay for another 6, 7 months. But
Hmm.
we can start having those conversations of
Absolutely.
what's to come. What are you going to need to budget for this? Is your team ready? What are things that you can do in the meantime that you can prep your data. And
Yeah.
that comes out a lot of times in these initial type consulting
Hmm.
projects, and then helping them go through the entire selection and understanding what makes the most sense for their business needs. And I've had that a lot in various questions this week from the other videos, and just replying back to that is everything is so unique to what your business needs. A lot of the solutions and most of the solutions could work for you, but they need, a consultant's expertise to help, clear out the noise and really get to what makes sense.
Absolutely. That is so well said. I have no notes whatsoever. That was perfect, Christy. Well, come back, join us next week. We will crown our champion. Head over to Christy's profile, vote, enter in the comments so that think about yourself as an SMB, reading these comments, really understanding what the options are out there. The reason we do this and spend our time on this type of thought leadership is so we can bring that unbiased opinion and make our SMB community more successful when it comes to technology. So with that, be sure to give Christy a follow on all of her channels. If you don't know, she's on YouTube, LinkedIn, and a variety of other shorts. She's getting real popular on TikTok, I heard. So, who knew that was
Who
a
knew, right?
financial system marketplace, but we love that. So highly encourage you to follow along. She does live streams typically weekly, and we will kind of wrap up this series, and she'll kind of preview what she's doing with her vendor partners in April, which will be a great opportunity to kind of ask them questions directly, put them in the hot seat, which Christy always puts them in the hot seat. That's just typically how she rolls. So with that, thank you so much to our audience for all these great questions today. Thank you, Christy, and we will see everyone next week.